the beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month, and we have this fabulous series, Latina Leaders Rising, El Poder de la Mujer. We want to kick off this incredible series with Aliana Apodaca from El Paso, Texas, from Texas. And what we want to do today, since it begins on a Sunday, is really give you a lot of inspiration and motivation and ideas of how you can keep on keeping on. So, Aliana, welcome. Aliana is
Hola.
right there in El Paso. And we thought, even before I introduce her, that we would start with a little centering and a little welcome of the divine spirit that guides us all. So let's take a deep breath, center ourselves, be grateful for this wonderful month that's unfolding, that elevates our people, that celebrates our culture, that helps us understand the incredible contributions that we have made in the past, in the present, and will do in the future. And we're so grateful to gather together with Latinas across this land to celebrate who we are as women and to celebrate el poder de la mujer, the power of women. Yes, it's our time as Latinas. And as we gather together to support each other, we find the energy, the love, the peace, the joy, and the power to move our people forward. So welcome, and let's hear a few inspirational words from wonderful Aliana Apodaca.
Oh, that was a beautiful prayer, Juana. Thank you so much. You know, before we begin the interview, I just want to stop and say thank you so much for doing this. We've known each other for so many years, and you put so much love, so much passion, you put energy to lifting women, lifting Latinas, lifting the Latino culture, that we all need to stop at this moment and say thank you for taking the time to do this and bringing all these women together. You just have done, you've got a tremendous lineup. It's going to be great. It is great.
Powerhouses is what it is.
That's right. They are, all of us.
And the other thing I want to say is, people thank me, but this is really just my job. I think, we've talked and we'll talk with women about being on purpose, really doing what you were sent here to do in a sense.
Exactly.
Aligning your experiences, where you were born, your talents, your interests, your passion. And then it's really not work. It's just what you do, and it's your job. So it's my job, and I love it, and I feel very fortunate. Well, one thing we want to do is really recognize the divine feminine. And because as we can see, even politically, it's time for women to step into power and to balance this earth, because the earth is out of balance because there's not enough of that nurturing, that compassionate, that inclusive spirit that women bring. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Aliana, because she has decades of experience in not only jazzing up people and motivating them to be their best self, but she has started Positive Directions, which is an amazing consulting firm that helps people focus on the positive. And you got to do that if you want to achieve it. But she's also the founder of the Southwest Women's Leadership Conference, which is a huge conference in El Paso. And I've had the privilege to be there and see how those women are just ignited and ready for action when they leave. And she's done something that I think is so important, the Administrators Professional Conference. A lot of us that are now professionals, we get to go to conferences, but what about our secretaries, our administrative staff, those that keep our place running, even our IT people? Let's really focus on developing them, and she's done that. So she inspires people to live life fully. So let's get started with her. So Aliana, welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to share with you that this is our 13th year for the Women's Leadership Conference. Next year, we're going to have our 25th annual Administrative Professionals Conference. And this is my 34th year in business, doing coaching, consulting, and training, and doing all the that I've been blessed to do. I feel very blessed.
Oh, well, of course. And for people that are listening that are younger than us, the best is ahead of you, and do not let age get in the way at all. You're a divine spirit. You do not age.
Unless you think that you are.
Right? Unless you think you do, yeah. Then you can have at it. But anyway, you have such an interesting background, one thing I want to share is because you were born in El Paso and you stayed
Yeah.
there. And I think in talking to Latino leaders, a lot of us do that. You know, we kind of stay where we're born, or like I have been in Denver for over 50 years. So we have that sense of presence. But you had a little bit of a difficult start. And I wanted you to talk to the women a little bit about that, because in overcoming our challenges, we become the powerful women that we are today.
Yeah. Yo, you talking about my growing up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
your
Well,
origin story.
I was born in El Paso, moved away once to live in San Jose, California, came back, went to live in Albuquerque, but I've been back in El Paso since 1985. But I did get a rough start. I mean, I didn't think I had a rough start, but when I started to tell the story of my growing up, people were like, wow. As a matter of fact, I just came back from the Pueblo. We have a Tigua Indian tribe here, and that's the neighborhood I grew up in. So I didn't know that I had grown up in the hood or the barrio until many years later. I just thought, this is just what life is supposed to be. But I'm putting together a video for my 70th birthday, which is in November, and went to visit the tribe, went to visit my childhood home. So it's interesting that we should be having this conversation today. I grew up in a home where I had mom and dad and 6 brothers and sisters. I'm the oldest of 7. And I got married right out of high school at the age of 16. And I didn't have to get married. That's what you did if you're a good girl, good Catholic girl. I went to Catholic schools all my life, and had a real shock with the kind of husband that I had chosen. And he was physically abusive and verbally abusive. And he finally did me the favor after 7 years of marriage to tell me, no eres bastante mujer para mí. And he took off with some other chick. And that was the end of that marriage. Although he came back in a couple of months later and
With
wanted
his
to
tail between his.
yeah, he wanted to change his mind. I said, "Oh, hell no, this is good. I like being on my own." It was tough financially. And the upbringing, it's interesting that I don't know, but I've spoken to other women over the years, but we don't know what's going on or the challenges because you're just kind of living through life.
Right.
Finding out in my childhood, I lived in an alcohol home with an alcoholic father, sexually abusive, and it was not something that you spoke about back in those days. And so it took me many years to really come out. I just kept dealing with the challenges of raising 2 kids by myself, being financially independent. I had to go through rough times. I was on welfare for a while because I just didn't have the means to be able to take care of 2 kids. So those are the kinds of challenges that I've shared with you over the years that I've had to overcome.
And so what do you think was the reason you were able to do it? Because so many women aren't able to lift themselves out of those circumstances. What are some things you did in order to prepare yourself to keep moving forward?
What I tell women when they ask this question is that my motivation is the same motivation that you have, especially Latinas. We want to do better for our kids. And so what got me going to, look for work, go back to school, et cetera, was I wanted to provide my children with better, not just materially, but also with opportunities. And so
So also
doing
with the example of women can do this.
well, and my great grandmother came from Chihuahua. She was the one that first came over the border, and she was a housekeeper, but she worked hard and she said, yo trabajo duro para que ustedes puedan. And she always told us, this is the land of opportunity. You get an education and you will have an opportunity. So I've seen the generations, and this is what I love about Latinas. We all have this connection. We have this origin story that we can share, where we have families, we have generations of people that have come to work hard, to sacrifice for us because they want more for the next generation. So my great grandmother was a housekeeper, my grandmother was a cook, my mother was a waitress, and now many years later, I've been a business owner now for 34 years. So that's I think the beauty. I know you hear all these stories all the time.
Yeah, but it's the collective power of our stories that allow us to see that this is happening as a people, as a community, as a culture. And that's really important for Latinos because we are not unified yet. And yet by sharing these stories, we can see all the connections that we have and how hard our ancestors, I like to say that we are the dreams of our ancestors. that
Mm.
they dream that someday someone would not have to work in housekeeping or cooking and cleaning like my mother did, or in the fields, or doing work. And there's nothing wrong with good, hard work,
No, no,
but they
no.
had no opportunity to educate themselves or to have positions where they had, greater economic resources, and were able to use their skills, because these were brilliant women.
Telling the story, telling your story, every woman that's listening to us now has a story to tell. I remember I went to go speak in Tyler, Texas in 1994. And that's the panhandle, closer to the eastern part of Texas. Whereas El Paso is mostly Latinos, it's the opposite in Tyler, Texas. And so I gave the keynote speech at a state conference for the Department of Health and Human Services and brought the house down. We had a break, and then I was going to do a workshop. So I go into the room where I'm doing a workshop, and there's a young lady, and she comes up and she goes, and Latina, and she says to me, I love what you had to say. It was, she had tears in her eyes, and she said, we don't see Latinas that do what you're doing. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she goes, my mom would love to see you. My grandma would love to see you. And I said, well, that'd be great. And she goes, well, they're outside the door. And this room that I was in, there was a door to the back of the room, and she opened the door, and it was outdoors at this hotel. And there was like 20 women. All you could tell were the
Wow.
housekeepers. They were, they were the workers. They were the ones that did all the work, and the pride in their eyes. They wanted. That was the first time I had somebody say, "Can I have your autograph?" And what we do as Latinas, when we tell the story, we inspire. I think what they do is they feel, I feel goosebumps, but I feel at a cellular level, we can change the way that we are when we take pride in somebody else's journey of success. And so I always tell women, tell your story. You have a story too. I grew up in a home where my great grandma always was telling stories. And we roll our eyes, and here she goes again. But those are the stories that we need to tell. When I work with businesses to consult to help their organizations be more effective, I ask for the stories about the business owner, about the previous CEO, because the stories have values. The stories have stories of resilience, of how we accomplished, how we achieved, and we need to do that individually.
Well, I also think these stories connect us.
Oh yeah.
Especially because, the majority of Latinos today are still working class. And so when we look at our people and the journey that we've had and tell our stories, we can begin to see those connections, regardless that you're Mexican from El Paso or I was born in the jungles of Nicaragua. We have all of these connections, and as people listen to these interviews, they'll see them, and then pretty soon they're going to go, wow, she's talking about me. She's talking about my journey. And there's just such power in that.
There is.
I mean, it really is, because, and plus we come from an oral tradition culture where we pass our knowledge and our wisdom through oral tradition, through telling stories. And I was kidding some mothers that I was working with. I said, because it is true. Kids are like, oh, she wants to tell a story. Tell the stories, because someday that will be so important to them to know where they came from. We're like trees with roots. And if you don't have those roots of where you came from, how are you going to know who you are or where you're going?
So important. It is so important.
Yeah, such a beautiful story, though. So here you are with all this resiliency, all these challenges you've overcome, and so you're getting ready to take the next step. What happened to Aliana Apodaca that all of a sudden I'm looking at this accomplished woman many years later?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I had a journey. I was an administrator of a cancer treatment center here. Then I decided I'd had enough of illness, and I became the office manager for a solar energy company. Then I got into sales because I had to find a way to be a single mom and manage 2 kids that I had to take to football practice and dance classes, and an 8-to-5 job wasn't going to cut it. So sales was it. And that was very stressful because you don't make any money if you don't sell anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that, when I was selling insurance, and I met this guy, and you've met my husband, and so we've been married now 37 years, husband number 3. But the year that
3rd time's a charm, ladies. I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, just saying, yeah. And I have a great husband, you know.
Yes. Yeah, treats you like the queen that you are.
Thank you. Yes, he does.
And
He does.
ladies, that's what you should be looking for.
Yes.
Someone who treats you like the queen that you are.
That's a whole another interview, right?
Yeah.
But so we get married, we have a baby, so now I have 3 children, and I was feeling so accomplished. I was feeling like, oh, okay, I finally have the right guy. We have this beautiful home. I have a new baby. And what I was feeling that morning in my prayer, I say my prayers every morning, and I was feeling this gratitude. And I'll never forget, I was outside in my backyard. The birds are tweeting around. It's full of green. I live close to the Rio Grande. And I got the message, and now it's your time to serve. That you need to give back. And I have been raised in a family that always gave back. We were very active in church. My mother was always, picking up clothes to take over to the orphanage in Juarez, cooking, all sorts of stuff. Just not philanthropists giving money per se. They gave money to the church, but they're also doing a lot of community stuff. And then I went to a girls' Catholic school. Service was definitely an emphasis. And so then I said, okay, now I need to give my life to doing what God wants me to do. And I prayed about it and I got the message. You need to share with women what you've done for yourself. How have you overcome financially, psychologically, overcome the trauma of sexual abuse and physical abuse? You need to share all that information. And I remember, looking up after a couple of days of prayer, and I said, God, I think you got the wrong girl. When I was a freshman in high school, they made us take a speech class, and I could not, for the life of me, want to give a speech. I don't know if I've ever told you the story.
Oh.
I'd get up and I would cry. And so I'll never forget, Ms. Zoomer was her name. And she said, finally, one day, she goes, I don't care if you cry through the whole thing and you've got boogers running down your face, you're going to finish that speech. Thank God she did, because it got a little bit easier over the years. But when I heard God say, I want you to share this with women, I'm like going, I don't know about this. And so one of the things that when I talk about finding purpose and finding mission is that all you have to do is say, number one, I want to be of service. I give my life. Let me tell me what I need to do. The homework's going to be, what are my strengths? And so that's what I did. I thought, well, what am I good at? What does he want me to do telling the story? And I remember sharing that with my daughter, Dawn, and she said to me, Mom, it's what you do with my girlfriends. You tell them how to fix their lives. And I'm like, I do? She goes, yeah, you do that to everybody. So I started having little workshops, and I had my regular job as still selling insurance, but I started having workshops for women, empowerment workshops. How do you create the life you want? And there's a formula to it. It's the same formula of manifestation in organizations as I do for individual people. And so that's what I started.
Okay, I got to stop you. Give us the formula.
Formula is number one, you got to believe what you believe is what you create.
What you believe is what you create. Absolutely. Yeah.
Number two, you have to have a vision, right? So you've got understanding it's in my head, what I believe is what I'm creating. So you have to understand the power of your mind, the power of your intention, the power of how you can manifest. You have to have a vision. Most people don't have a vision of what they want. They kind of schlep through life, work, they do the grind, etc. But it's like, what do you really want? And so then what happens then is all your limiting beliefs start to come out. It's kind of like you have a closet full of clothes and you decide, I'm going to lose weight, and you do. And then all of a sudden you got to buy new clothes. Well, if you don't take out the old clothes from the closet, you can't put in the new clothes, right? So then you have to take out the psychologically limiting beliefs so that you can manifest the vision. And I'm simplifying this for the purpose of time.
But let me emphasize that one. So in addition to the vision, you have to do some house cleaning.
Yeah.
For example, like for me, I had to work really hard on my self-image, and it isn't something you just do once. You have to continuously improve and think about and emphasize your positive traits. So, but getting rid of the old allows the new to grow.
Well, and to expect that the old beliefs are going to surface, that's just a given. It's somebody, well, you just set the vision and it happens. And I said, no, because all the reasons you believe that you can't have the vision are going to surface. You have to deal with that. And that could be trauma. That could be memories. That could be experiences that you've had. You got to clean out the closet of those. So it is hard work. It's not for weenies. You got to eat your Wheaties for sure.
Well, actually, I went into therapy, everyone, in my 30s, and the therapist said to me, you are going to be healed when you understand that getting rid of something, even though it's painful, is less painful than carrying it.
Oh
You
yeah.
see what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
so when you let go, yes, it's hard sometimes. And I went through very similar experiences with you, with my father being an alcoholic, with being sexually abused, with growing up in a low-income family, all this stuff. But when you heal from that, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Yeah.
And when you heal from it, then you know that you have room now to become a complete person, and that those things were there for a reason.
That's what one day my daughter asked me. She says, how did you do it? How have you forgiven my father? How have you forgiven your father? How have you, and I said, because I understand that those experiences have made me the woman I am today. And I feel very blessed to be able to, and this is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, but the work of forgiveness of self and others, that's a big part of the spiritual journey. There's so many people I don't know if they've encountered that have grudges. They have grudges of people at work, people that they, in the community, and we don't let those go. Well, that holds us back. Forgiveness is a gift that I give to myself. It's not for the other person.
Yeah, because the other person, a lot of times you're carrying a grudge from your childhood. That person is not even alive anymore. And so being able to heal that is so important for you, not for that other person. And the other thing I found, is that you think this person really hurt you, and they don't have a clue.
Yeah.
They don't have a clue, I
Yeah.
mean, but
Well, when I went into,
forgiveness is an interesting thing, by the way, because it's also like your self-image that you have to work on it every day. Forgiveness is also something you just have to take a breath and let go of, because things will come up again. But it gives you an opportunity to keep your side of the street clean.
well, and all those emotions that don't, I mean, the forgiveness, not forgiving, negativity, shame, all those emotions store in our bodies. And so then we start having physical ailments. And now at this point in my career, I see so many women that are not taking care of themselves emotionally and psychologically and spiritually. They're real good on the career track, but then all of a sudden they hit a bump on the road, and it's like, now you've got some major housekeeping to do. And so I encourage women to take the time to make sure that they have every week at least 1 hour of time devoted to spirituality. And that doesn't mean that you have to go to church or whatever. In my book, it's that you spend the time connecting with your God, whoever that is, that you feel the blessings of that God. And how I envision it when I do my prayers is I envision God's energy coming into me, filling in my heart and my soul, and emanating out into the world, so that before I take off for the day for my work, I am able to say I'm connecting with everybody as a human being. And also blessing myself and acknowledging what I bring to the table.
That's beautiful. Okay, so let's see if we have the steps. First,
You have to understand that you're talking about the transformation.
yeah.
Number one is you have to accept responsibility for your thoughts, because what
Okay.
you believe is what you create.
Okay.
So
Number
what I
two.
have out here in my world, okay,
Mhm.
if I don't have the man that I want, I'm manifesting that. I believe that somewhere, that I don't deserve that. If I don't have the right kind of financial house, if I don't have the right kind of job, that's all something that you're creating with your beliefs.
Right.
Okay, that's number one, accepting that responsibility. That's major, right? Number two, then you have to have a vision. What do you want to create? Right? And then what's going to happen when you have the vision and you accept responsibility for your beliefs, all the limiting beliefs are going to surface.
Okay.
So I've had people tell me, well, you told me to set a vision, but now I've got this problem, I got this problem, I got that problem. I say, yeah, that's all
Those
crap.
are the stumbling blocks that you put there, actually, or
Yeah,
that
so
you have paid attention to.
we have to deal with
Another
them.
way to look at it is that there's so many things you can focus your attention on. Focus your attention on where you want to be, what you want to do, what are the positive things about you. And I love your morning prayer, because I try to do the exact same thing, which is to prepare myself so that I may serve at a higher level.
I was just sharing, because somebody was asking me, okay, walk me through what you do with your prayers. And I'm like, okay. So number one, I go to a space that's quiet. that I like it early in the morning out on my patio. Right now it's full of hummingbirds. So go to a space that you feel magical in, number one. Number two is to surrender yourself in gratitude. And so I begin with thank you for allowing me to wake up this morning. I thank you for whatever I think about what I'm grateful for. I anticipate the people I'm going to be meeting that day. I bless them ahead of time. I bless the opportunity. Sometimes I'm in situations where I have to resolve conflict. And so I bless that situation. Then I call in my spirit guides. We forget that we have been assigned angels from the time of birth. And so you've got helpers that you don't even acknowledge most of the time. So I say, calling in my spirit guides. I have a council of wise women. I have my ancestors. I call in my ancestors that have passed on directly, my mom, my dad, my son, my grandson, my great grandma. I call all of them in. And I said, I ask for your help. And we have to learn to ask for help. And so that is one of the magic things that I've learned as I've gotten older, is that I share with my friends, I share with the people that I feel can really it resonates with them. I want help manifesting this. So I bring in my spirit guides, my angels, and I ask them for their support. I think that we as women forget that we don't have to do it by ourselves. That if we really could develop that council idea, or that the comadres, the tribe, whatever you want to call it, to be able to ask for help. So many women, I believe that the ones that I've encountered with, and they're not all Latinas on a professional basis where I'm coaching them, they don't see themselves asking for help in some areas of their lives.
I'm guilty as charged.
Are you really? Oh.
No, I do ask for help, but I think I've had to learn that. And I also think that a lot of the women that are listening were so self-reliant. You know, for you to be able to do what you've done, we become very self-reliant. And that's where the problem comes, because, you know, then you end up doing everything rather than saying, okay, you know, I'll do my part and you do your part. And I think another thing is that we have a wonderful session on negotiation and on asking for what you want, because those are other skills that we have to learn. You know, I tell people that when I ran Mi Casa Women's Center, every woman had to take an assertiveness training course to learn to ask for what you want, because we're caretakers. We've been the mothers, the daughters, the you know, the tias, the abuelas, and so we are used to taking care of people. But but we need to teach each other how to share that.
I have a friend who is an administrator at a hospital, and she negotiates contracts with doctors, right? And she says, it does not fail. Every time I'm negotiating, the men will always negotiate. They never accept the number I give them.
Oh, wow.
Women always accept it. She says, I think I've had one woman kind of go, can you kind of give me a little bit more?
Okay, everybody, watch negotiation. It's called When They Say No, I Say Game's On.
That's another interview that you have, right?
Yeah, we have it, Elizabeth Suarez. Anyway, back to your prayer. So you're setting your standard for the day, and you're actually doing what you say, getting your mind ready, being positive about it so that you can open up a positive day.
I'm very specific with my prayers too. And they change. My prayer, my request for my spirit guides, my angels changes. And so right now I'm working on something with a relationship with my daughter. I'm working at having more fun in my life, not being so, you know, gung-ho all the time, a little bit of, you know, relaxing by the pool kind of thing. So it's important to look at what do I need help with right now. And so then let's say in a month, the prayer can change.
Right.
But I start
Now,
with gratitude.
let me say this, because I know some of the women that are listening may not have this feeling about spirit guides. I feel very, very connected to my ancestors. And I also feel, and I know who they are, because, you know, I know my grandmother, my mother, my sisters that have passed on. And that's great, because it's no longer an amorphous ancestor. I know who my ancestors are. And I also feel like I have this huge, big angel that keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah.
But I don't really have that sense. And I may be lying, because I also have my teachers and mentors that have gone on before me. And some of those, by the way, are people I never met, like the people who wrote on leaderships, Robert Greenleaf, who wrote The Servant Leader, and who said the same thing you did. He said, the servant leader asks, how might I best serve? So I know I have these people, some I've met, some I haven't. but I don't really have that feeling of I have an entourage of spirit guides. Can you say a little more about that?
Well, I remember, it's interesting you should ask that. I remember growing up with a picture in my bedroom, and I still have it. And it's a guardian angel, and it's a woman, and she's guiding this little boy and this little girl across this little kind of barely there bridge across this canyon.
Uh-huh.
And there's a storm, etc. And my mother always tell me, reza a tu ángel. So I just kind of knew. And then, of course, being brought up Catholic, you always had these angels about you, right? I'm going to put it simply. God would not create you without help in this world. He brought you in with help.
Or she brought you in.
Or she, yeah. So he,
or
she,
they
right?
brought you in.
Or
I like
they
the
brought,
they.
you know, we have access to help.
Yeah, I think.
Now, so if somebody is having a hard time with this, then the concept simply of bringing in from the heavens, right? Then simply recognize that you have that help here on earth,
Right.
but you have to ask.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think we've gotten through all the steps. So now,
Oh,
now
we
we're
did.
praying.
Oh, the
No.
prayer. I'm trying to think.
You have to assess your skills, and you come on. There's some more things you got to do if you're really going to manifest your dreams.
Oh, okay. You're not on the prayer stuff.
Well, prayer is part of it, but
Yeah, prayer is part of it. Yeah.
So we were talking about forgiveness as one. We were talking about cleaning out your closet and making room, but that's partly through forgiveness.
Well, the formula is simple. The work is what's challenging. And so, for example, if I'll give you an example. Okay, so when I heard from God, I want you to share with women. I didn't know what that looked like, right? What do I do? Then your intentionality to serve, your intentionality to say, what are the gifts that I have been given? What are my talents, and how do I use them to serve? And then I started asking questions, and many books that are available as to how do I determine my purpose and my mission, if you will give you the same thing. You got to take inventory of what are my strengths. And so as I asked people, what do you think I'm good at? I kept getting the same answer. You're a motivator. You're always optimistic. You give hope. I would go to my clients, and most of my clients at that time were CEOs or owners of businesses or HR people. And they said to me repeatedly, it said, if I tell you a problem, you know, you're going to give me advice on how to fix it. And I'll be darned that you give me good advice. So you got to take assessment of what am I good at?
I like going around and asking people too, because that's great.
One of the books that I read that I recommend all the time is called Work with Passion, the Money Will Follow. Because I was hung up on, okay, I'm going to be of service, but how do I make money? And you've always told me I'm good at making money.
You're good at making money. I'm good at service. Except I consider myself independently wealthy, because part of that has to do with what do you need? I feel like I have everything I need.
Yeah, exactly. You know? So I feel I'm of service, but I've also found a way to monetize that, right? To be able to provide for myself and my family. But the book is called Work with Passion, the Money Will Follow with Nancy Anderson. And one of the exercises that she has you do in the book is for you to go back in memory as to something that you enjoyed when you were a young girl, let's say between 7 and 9, because by 10, you're kind of like, you know, kind of down on yourself. But if we do 7, 8, 9 years old, and I remembered when I did this exercise that I enjoyed. So here I am living in the hood. We don't even have running water in the house. We have to use a pump, right? And we don't have paved streets where I grew up. But I organized the neighborhood so that we would have productions. So during the summer, I would have productions. My dad was a forklift operator, so he would bring these wooden pallets. So we put the wooden pallets, that was our stage. I had the rope and we had the curtain, and I was the MC, and I had everybody practice, you know, singing or dancing or, you know, reciting. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's kind of what I do with my conferences now, right?
Yeah, you start with music, you're dancing, the women are dancing.
Exactly.
I have to tell you that a lot of the women I interview incorporate dance into what they do. And that's so important, because that's part of our soul as Latinos.
Yeah, you got to move the body, right?
And we're kinetic learners. And on top of that, dancing is such a community connector. It's just so much fun. And
even if you don't like dancing, you like when the people around you are dancing.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and you don't have to be a great dancer. You know, if you look at a lot of indigenous dancing, it's just one foot after the other.
Yeah.
It's not very complicated.
You know, I just,
So
in May,
cumbia, by the way, is very popular right now, and it's not very hard for folks that
what,
want to learn
the
to do
cumbia?
cumbia. Yeah, it's just
Oh,
step,
yeah.
step, step,
Yeah,
step,
yeah.
step, 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 step. So,
And shake the
yeah,
hips. You got to shake the
yeah, you
hips.
got to move those hips. You got to
Yeah.
move those hips. Here we go.
I was going to share with you that in May, I did a workshop in San Antonio. And my audience were women leaders, and they're all scientists, engineers, mathematicians, etc. And they're, you know, they want the formula, right? So I gave them this formula, and they go, and that's it. I'm like, it sounds simple, but the work is you got to get rid of the items in the closet. That's the work, right? Well, each step is work, but that to me is a lifetime. I mean, I'm still working on getting rid of some of my old clothes, right? In the beliefs that I have. So we did the workshop. They were okay. I said, just give it a try. I'll be darned, I'm getting emails. You're right. All you have to do is pray, have intention, you know, do your homework, if you will. What am I good at? What are my strengths? What is it that I've always liked to do? And to start moving in that direction. The doors start to open up. I was going to share. So when I decided that, I thought, okay, God, if you want me to speak and to, you know, share this with women, I don't know how the hell to do this. Well, I'll be darned. The first thing, I have a friend who calls me up and says he's the area manager for an insurance company. He says, oye, güera, quiero que hables con mi gente. And I'm like, what do you want me to talk to him about? He says, well, you know, you're always so positive. I'm like, okay. So I go give a
But
presentation.
the name of our company is Positive Directions.
Directions, that's right. Yeah.
And that's the other thing. Once you find this, stay focused.
Stay focused. So that what I'm the point I want to make here is the minute you say, I think this is what I want to do, be open to have the universe give you signs. And so I got signs. I got signs. The second one that I got was to give a speech in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is like a 30-minute drive from my house. And it was a speech to young girls in high school. It was called Las Angelitas. And they had to bring a mom, an aunt, abuelita. They had to bring a woman in their life.
That's an interesting way of looking at your angels, everyone. Your
Exactly.
angelitas.
Las Angelitas.
I like that.
So I go give this speech. I bring the house down. They rush to the front, and I had, you know, this was one of my very first speeches that I gave. And all of a sudden, in this crowd, there's this big hotel room, and down the middle of the hotel, towards the podium, comes this little old lady. I have never forgotten what she looks like. Morenita with white hair, and she walks up to me, and she barely was over the podium, and she put her finger up in the air, and her finger like kind of magically moved, and she said to me, tu don es de hablar.
Ah,
And I'm like,
gift is to speak.
your gift is to speak. And then she disappeared. And I thought, well, okay, that was kind of weird. And so I continued, you know, talking to the ladies and the girls, etc. I'm driving home, and I'm having a conversation with God. And he says, okay, you know, she says, well, okay, you know, what else do you want? And I said, well, how do you make money at this? I got to make a living. I have obligations. So I get home, you know, a couple of days go by, and in the mail, I get a check. And the check was from Las Angelitas for $500. I'm like, well, there's got to be some mistake. What the heck would I be getting? I call up the guy that was running the program, and I said, hey, Arturo, I got a check in the mail. He goes, yeah, that's our speaker honorarium. I'm like, the what?
I love this because sometimes you don't even know what you need to know.
No, I had no clue, right? So then I'm like, you pay for this? Remember, this is before cell phones, the internet, computers. You just can't go Google everything, right? There's no information. So the third one was somebody found out, because at this point now I'm successful in my insurance career. And so somebody found out that I was a former welfare mother. There's a conference here in El Paso. Would you please come speak? These are all workers from Department of Health and Human Services. I gave the speech. They loved it. And they said, they called back a couple of days later, and they said, we love what you said. Could you have anything more? I'm like what? And so I thought of a book that I had read. I liked this book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Right.
by Stephen Covey. So I thought, well, okay. So I took out the book and there was a phone number on the back. I call up and I tell them what I need. Well, the next thing you know, I'm talking to somebody in recruitment because they need a Spanish speaking presenter. So then that's how I got into the world of training and
Wow.
speaking, all because you open yourself up, you
Yeah.
allow the signs to come to you, and you bite them on them. You kind of look at them and you go, okay, well, let me go with it. And so since then, I've been able to build a very beautiful career on providing the information of empowerment, organizational consulting, leadership, all that. But it's the point here is you have to intention, deep soul intention to serve, to use my gifts, to be a blessing onto this world.
Mhm.
And when you
I
focus
love
on,
that, to be a blessing onto this world.
yes, I
Yeah,
mean, that's
and if
what
we all here to bless each other and to give
yes.
our gifts. You know, I heard a really interesting thing lately, and that is, since we're all unique and God never makes, or the Spirit never makes anything twice, nothing,
Mhm.
not a snowflake, not a flower, not my wonderful cat. So anyway, if you don't give your gifts, there's a hole in the universe. Because you were
Oh,
born to do certain things, and that's really true. Like my sister Rosemary, who was my oldest sister, she was 20 years older than me. She had learned to sew in Nicaragua, you know, because in that age, she would be 110 today, or not today,
oh,
but this year.
uh-huh.
And uh, she had learned to do all this sewing because that's what young girls did. And when she came to the United States, she started sewing for people. And then she built a little room under her house and hired other people to work with her. And then she ended up having, she was in West Palm Beach, ended up having a shop in Palm Beach and sewing for people like Estee Lauder
Oh, wow.
and
Oh my
Mrs.
God.
DuPont
Uh-huh.
and Rose Kennedy. I mean, and my sister was a seamstress to begin with, and then began designing a line. And then my hairdresser, Paul Garcia, who also, you know, grew up in a poor Latino family, he ended up being the best hairdresser in the Southwest. He's passed on though, but my hair still looks good because of Paul. But it doesn't matter what you do. You could be the best waitress. I worked as a waitress in college, and I was a hell of a waitress because I would talk to people. I would care about them. You know, I wanted to make sure they got good service. And so it doesn't matter what your gifts are, but that gift that you have, nobody else can do.
And when you step into your gifts, there is a joy that emanates through your body, that emanates out to people, and that's what our world needs. And that's what we're seeing so much of women leaders right now, that they're emanating joy, that they're emanating aliveness, that they're emanating compassion and kindness. And as you said earlier, that's what our world needs right now. But we need men and women to be alive with purpose, with surrendering to be of service, to be a blessing, to use the gifts that they have, because that's then life, not that it gets not challenging, you still have challenges, but it becomes something that I can deal with because I'm moving forward in using my gifts and being of service. And so I don't care. I remember one time I did a workshop, and this was for immigrant women, and that they were living in the housing projects in El Paso. And my job was to provide them with building their self-confidence so they could go apply for jobs. And we're having a session and we're talking about, you know, everybody has something that they do well. And so, you know, we did the exercise and everything. Yo soy esto, yo soy lo otro. One lady, she said, yo no tengo nada. Yo no hago nada bien. And I do nothing well. And I'm like, what do you mean? So I start talking to her, right? And in front of the class. And so I said, okay, tell me about yourself. So she was a single mom. She had 9 kids.
Ooh.
Yeah. And they had, and I said, well, you know, you take care of 9 kids. She goes, yeah, and so does todo mundo lo hace. Everybody, you know, no, there was nothing special about anything that I offered her. You clothe them, you're able to, you know, deal with, you know, somehow you're able to support these kids with very little money, etc. Blah, blah, blah. And so then I finally looked at her and I said, her name was Esmeralda. And I said, Esmeralda, ¿haces tortillas? ¿Puedes hacer tortillas? Can you make tortillas? And she looked at me like, God, how boring this woman is, right? Of course I can make tortillas. Everybody does, right? And I look at her and I said, I can't make tortillas. And she looked at me and her eyes lit up and she wrote down on her paper in Spanish, she says, yo hago las mejores tortillas del mundo. I make the best tortillas in the world. And when she got that feeling, when she connected with her strength, oh my God, she was unbeatable. You could not hold her back. She went on, she finished her study, she got her GED. I mean, she just, this is a success story because she finally could, I mean, I can't say that I give credit just
No,
to
I
that.
always just think that it's a little drop in the bucket and another
Yeah,
drop in the
it's
bucket,
the
but
kick that
eventually the
she-
bucket's full.
Yeah, it's the kick that she needed to get
Yeah.
going, and I saw her years afterwards, and it's like that it's a beautiful experience. It's very rewarding to me when I hear people tell me, you know, I thought you were crazy when you were giving this presentation, but years later, I listened to you and look where I am now. And so those are beautiful experiences and the reward of the work. I know you wanna, and I know that these interviews for you are the reward because you're interviewing a lot of us that are your friends, and you've been a big part of our lives. And so that is the magic that happens when people step into service, when they step into their joy and using the gifts that God gave them.
That's a beautiful
When
way.
we're
to look
blessings
at that.
unto each other.
Mhm. Well, you know, I want to focus this last part of our interview on Latinas and our culture
Mhm.
and what you see, because I know I've been to your conferences, and one great thing about them is that they bring all the different groups of women together. And that's a really important thing. I'm hoping that the women that are listening that are Latinas, yeah, we're going to do our Latina network and strengthen that. But also, we have so many gifts to give to the world as Latinas. So what are the really special things that you think about our culture and about Latinas that we have to contribute?
Oh, wow. I think what's special when you connect with a tribe of women who have maybe not exactly your background or the challenges that you've had, but their family, there's, as I said earlier, at a cellular level, we're connecting.
Yes.
But I also want to mention that I find that connection with all women that have had a similar growing up, if you will, overcoming challenges. They can be Black, they can be Asian, they can be Native American. We need to learn as women to connect with women of all.
Yeah, I think women are the connecting or the missing link,
yeah.
because
we
if
are.
we can all connect, we will have the critical mass to be able to bring about a more compassionate, nurturing world. You know, my new definition of leadership is that leadership is creating a society that takes care of its people. And that's such a beautiful way to look at what we're all doing. We're all creating a society where our children can be educated, where everyone can have a nice little house like my parents had, you know, where we can all enjoy the fruits of our labor and not have to work, you know, two jobs just to survive. And
That you
so
feel safe.
exactly,
Yeah.
particularly as women, and you know, I'm looking forward to us doing more work on trying to get guns off the street, for example.
Yes.
Because that's the work of women, really. I mean, you know, you don't see women gun-toting around.
No, but you know, so as women, for those, we've all been mothered. And some of us are mothers, some of us are grandmothers, and so we can relate to the world with that kind of knowing. Somehow God blessed us as women to be able to rise above and to see a problem and to see it at a higher level, and to also project out for generations to come. I know that you have a very a powerful statement with Native Americans that I need to look at 7 generations back. And
Right.
7
It
generations
says that
forward.
the great leader considers every decision based on their children, their children's children, and unto 7 generations. And you know, I think it has to do with women being the vessels for life. And so therefore we are the protectors of life. And also because we're mothers, we have that deep connection of what it means to be that giver of life, whether it's your own children or other children that you run into, or just in building a sense of community, because that's where we live. We live in our relationships, we live in our connection.
Well, and for the women who are maybe listening and don't have children, it's, you still have it in you. You've been mothered. That can be the children that you see crossing the street. We have that innate compassion to be able to if we step into it. Because here's the thing, I've coached some women that you go, oh my God, where the hell did you come from, right? Because they're so not what we're talking about, but I believe that it's there. They just have not tapped into it.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's a deeper conversation, but this whole thing about yin and yang and the feminine and the masculine, that there's 2 energies. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, patriarchy and male dominance has been here for so long that the feminine, which you can describe it in any way, I know there's lots of gender fluidity now, but that sense of nurturing, that sense of connection, that sense of relationship, the fact that women have been other-centered and centered on people rather than on just me. And so I think that we have this incredible gift to give. And I do think that Latinas, because we come from an intact community, I mean, we call ourselves the Latino or Latina community because we still have those connections with people in our culture. And so we can really expand this sense of caring and nurturing and creating the kind of world where people are valued and
Mhm.
taken care of as part of our cultural gifts.
Before COVID, I started to look at what was I feeling and seeing in the organizations that I was working in, so at the conferences that I produced, and I was feeling something, but I didn't have words for it, and I do now. And before COVID, the conclusion I've come to is that we have been stepping away further and further from each other, and we didn't feel a connection to each other. We didn't have an intimacy with each other. We didn't have, we still don't, we don't have that sense of tribe, that sense of belonging. And God made us to want to belong. And I know that for us as Latinos, a lot of us, and other cultures as well, very family-centered, you feel a sense of belonging, even though you may not like Tio Juan or whatever, there's always those family gatherings and there's a sense of connection. And so with the isolation of COVID, that has even been more pronounced. And what do women bring to the table? What do our organizations need? What do our communities need? We need that sense of belonging, that sense of connection, that sense of being intimate and vulnerable to one another so that we can be seen and we can see others. And so that's one of the things that I think as Latinas and as women we bring to the table. We have that in our hearts and in our souls.
Mhm. Yeah. Anyway, as we kind of move into Hispanic Heritage Month, I want to encourage so many of our women to really take a look not only at their own personal development, but how they can use like this series and other kinds of Latina connections to really build this sense of community with each other so that we do support each other and we do have people that can help us along the way, because that's so important. And in all of our leadership work with women, it's about that network, that connection, those comadres that really make us strong enough and secure enough to be able to follow our passion and find our purpose.
Yeah. Now, how many of these interviews are you doing?
I'm doing 16 interviews,
Okay.
17 people, because with Comadres de las Americas, I interviewed the next generation that's taking over, which is so important because I would love to see young women really start connecting and creating this intergenerational circle where we can all learn from each other.
Well, I would encourage the women that are listening right now to maybe gather a group of women to watch an interview, maybe one a month, have a little get together at somebody's house, watch the video, critique it. What did I learn from it? What can we do with each other? Really use these stories, because I know you've got some fabulous speakers that and people you're going to interview. And so I'm hoping that this takes off to help more and more women. I know that's one of the reasons that when you suggested be part of your interview, I said, absolutely, I will help you with any way I can. But if the women that are listening to this video will take on listening to the other videos and share that with other women, bring them into your home, have a little get together, have it be a training session at your company during a lunch hour or something. These are really valuable interviews that you're going to be listening to.
Yeah, and not only that, do your own interviews.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
No, I mean, have fun with each other, share your stories, interview each other, and let's keep this momentum going. So I want to wish everyone happy Hispanic Heritage Month. You may be watching this at another time, but remember, Hispanic Heritage is not a month. It's a lifestyle. It's a culture. It's a future. And so thank you all so much for joining us. Aliana, thank you for your words of wisdom.
Thank you for the
always
opportunity.
share with such an open heart. She really is. Look her up on Positive Directions, and we'll have all her information, so you'll be able to do that. Use these interviews, and we will be back with you. And we are hoping that all the women that are listening just pump themselves up, get really positive, figure out their intentions, do their work, and end up moving up to a higher level. Te quiero, Tijuana.
Nos vemos.